Hi, it's Pam at 101 Mile Kitchen, and today I'm making a pot of cowboy beans. I have a recipe up on my website recently for a cowboy sloppy joe, which is really a fun thing to feed the kids all summer long, or feed people when they're coming out of the lake or from doing their summertime activities. And today I thought I'd make a pot of beans to go with it. I thought you'd be interested in seeing a pot of beans come together from dried bean, dried unsoaked bean, to the final product. So today I'm using a Rancho Gordo bean. I'm using the Santa Maria pinquitas. They're a small bean. Let's see if you can see that bean. They're small little beans. They're pink skinned, and these have not been soaked. Rancho Gordo beans are so fresh that they don't require a soaking ahead of time, unlike some of the beans you'll buy at the grocery store that have been around for goodness knows how long and are a lot more difficult to get cooked through unless they're given a heavy soak. Today I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to start with these beans, and I'm only going to cook half of the pound of beans today, so I'm going to measure that out. There, almost there. I'll have another half a pound for a future use, but today I'll just use these. We'll get rid of that. So unsoaked beans, as I said, I'm going to give them a quick rinse here just to make sure there's no dirt or dust or debris on them. I have my sink right next to me here, so I'll just rinse and pour that out very simply. And I'm going to put those in. No, I'm not going to put them in my pot just yet because we have other things we need to do first. The rest of the ingredients are some aromatics. I have about 10 cloves of garlic. You heard that right, 10 cloves of garlic that I've chopped. I have was a fairly good sized jalapeno pepper, half of a yellow onion that is chopped, and 2 slices of bacon that I have chopped. If you're not a meat eater, don't let that stop you from making this recipe. Simply substitute 1 tablespoon of oil, because we're going to use this as the sauteing fat and the cooking fat for the beans. The bacon fat will do that. You won't have the bacon fat, just substitute 1 tablespoon of your favorite cooking oil and add a teaspoon of smoked paprika for that smoky quality that you'll want in the beans, and your flavor difference will be nominal. So we also have, I have a can of stout, a dark beer. You could use really any beer that you might happen to have around, and this one is from Athletic Brewing Company. It's called All Out Stout. It is a non-alcoholic beer, and I have those around all the time, and they're great for cooking with, so I'll include that. I'll put in a couple of tablespoons of tomato paste for a little bit of richness, and I'll be using some Rancho Gordo Mexican oregano to give it a real earthy, resiny kind of flavor that will just bring us into that cowboy zone, and just a little tiny touch of brown sugar that will soften the edge of the sharp tomato flavors. So let's get started with cooking this. Get my cooktop started, and I'm using my Staub pot, as I mentioned earlier. I'll just get that going, and I'll turn that on. And I'm going to start with the bacon. So we want to render the fat from the bacon before we add our other aromatics. So I just added that. And just so you have an idea, frame of reference for the amount of time that this will take, I can't really tell you how long the cooking time will be for the beans. I'm going to guess it'll be about 2 to 2.5 hours once I get started. but all of the prep for this really took about 10 minutes. So it's mostly about 10 minutes of hands-on time, and the rest is just come by and stir and check it out to make sure that it's coming along, or that it doesn't need more liquid, but it's hands-off time. You can go about doing other things. So we'll just make sure that our bacon is starting to render, and I'm just cooking that on about medium-high heat. And then we will literally just slide in these aromatics right into the pot, just as soon as there's a little bit of oil in the bottom of the pot. So we just want the bacon to just begin to cook and to begin to let off some of its fat. I'm gonna say maybe about 1.5 minutes. There'll be enough fat to just sort of lightly coat the bottom of the pan, and that will be enough, because then the bacon will finish cooking along with the aromatics or vegetables here that will soften for a few minutes before we add the rest of the ingredients. So I want to also talk a little more about the Rancho Gordo beans. The Rancho Gordo beans are heirloom beans. They are grown. Rancho Gordo is based in Napa, California, but a lot of the beans, not all of them, but a lot of the beans are grown in Mexico with a joint project to help keep heirloom beans alive and to continue them, keeping them an important food source. And as I mentioned, they are grown and harvested and brought to market really quickly. They're also, you order them by mail. Most people order them by mail. You may be lucky enough to have them at a grocery or a specialty shop near you. I order mine online. That way I just always have a bunch of beans here because we do cook with them fairly regularly. So they're not that expensive, and a 1-pound bag of beans goes a long way to feed you and your family. So they're a very good value. All right, and then you can see a little bit of steam coming up, and I think you can see that the bacon is just starting to render a little. So we'll go ahead and slide these vegetables right into the pot where they will do a little cooking. They'll just begin to soften before we add the rest of our ingredients. I like having everything all chopped and ready to go before I start cooking. It just helps things go smoothly. It makes sure that you have all of the ingredients you need before you get started, so you're cooking in a more calm manner because you're not in a frenzy to make sure that you have everything before you get going on it and be stuck in the middle. Oh no, I don't have an ingredient. And it's just an efficient way to cook. It makes it so that I could, if I weren't talking with you, walk away and do cleanup, or I could begin my next dish, or I could go do any other thing. I could read a book if I wanted to while things were cooking. And it is just a lot. Having all your things, all your ingredients gathered together and prepared, this makes life better. We're just going to let these saute for a couple of minutes too, just until the onion is becoming slightly transparent. Because we want it to be just a little soft, but we don't want these vegetables to really ultimately be terribly mushy. We want them to flavor the water and the liquids that the beans will cook in, but they don't need to be all the way to mush, so we don't need to overcook them. I'm starting to smell the heat of the jalapeno, which smells beautiful, and it smells so amazing with the bacon and onion and garlic. What's wrong with any of those ingredients? Those are all so delicious. So I see that the onion, probably a little hard for you to see into this tall cook pot, but the onion is beginning to turn clear rather than pure white. Or a little more translucent anyway, not all the way clear just yet, but looks like the fat from the bacon is rendering off just as we'd like it to. And honestly, the aroma is just so beautiful. It just overwhelms me right now, actually. I think while these are sauteing and there is a little bit of fat in the pan, I'm going to add my oregano, and I'm using the Mexican oregano by Rancho Gordo. I buy my oregano from them because it is also just wildly fresh, so much more aromatic than some other spices that you have. And if you've had your spices around a while, they may not be adding as much to your food as you'd like them to. So be sure and keep some fresh spices. Mexican oregano has a little more resinous tone to it than the Mediterranean oregano that you would find in Italian or Greek or other food like that, or any ordinary food. And it is delicious. A little bit of a limey, bright limey pop of scent along with that resinous, earthy flavor. So I'm going to add some of this right now. And I'm not going to measure it. I think I'm going to use that's about 2 teaspoons. And I just put it in the palm of my hand and I'm crushing it together while I'm rubbing my hands together to just make the pieces a little bit smaller. And so delicious. Oh, and the heat from the pan is opening up all the oils from that oregano and also adding to this beautiful aroma. All right, I think our vegetables are there, so we're going to add our beans straight away to the pot. We'll add the beans. I'm going to add you don't have to measure this precisely. I think if you know your ingredients and sort of know what you're after, you'll kind of be able to tell. This is about half of one of the little 6-ounce cans, or I'd say about 2.5, 3 tablespoons of the tomato paste. We'll add that right there. And I'm going to give that a stir. There's no liquid yet to dissolve it, but that'll help disperse it among the other ingredients. So when I add the liquid, it will emulsify with the ingredients. So you can kind of see, let's see if I can, that it just sort of spread around and coated the beans and vegetables a little bit. I'm going to add the whole can of beer because we're not really measuring our water. We just know that we want enough liquid to cover these beans by a good inch. That's what we're looking for. Just to cover the beans by a good inch, and we may end up adding some water. I do like a brothy bean. I like it to leave behind some broth. I can always scoop it out of the broth, but the broth is essentially just delicious. So we've got that stirred together, and it's then I'm just gonna add about a tablespoon of brown sugar. I have some organic brown sugar. It's quite nubby, quite chunky for brown sugar. And let's see if I can show you what's happening in the pot here. I don't know if you can see, but the liquid is a dark brick red, and it's not quite an inch over the top of our pot. And this is gonna smell like you have just been on riding the trail with the cowboys. That's what it smells like to me. I'm not sure if that's exactly true, but that's what I imagine it to be like. I'm just capturing some more water. I measured out 2 cups of water. I'm gonna start with adding about half of that right now. And stirring that in to see if that will cover our beans and ingredients by about an inch. That rule of thumb works just about no matter what size your pot is or how many beans you have in it. If you cover it by about an inch, like I said, you may end up adding some more water in 45 minutes or so. But better that than have it be maybe a little bit too wet, a little bit too much liquid. So simply what happens next is I will bring this to a boil. I will loosely cover the pot. I'm not going to seal it. I'm just going to loosely cover it so that there's a big gap for steam to come out. That helps keep the beans intact rather than pressurize them and have them sort of fall apart. So I like to do it that way. I don't like to cover my beans. I used to do it that way, and I wondered for a long time why my beans would end up kind of breaking into pieces and not left in whole beans. So I've learned that is what works. So I will be bringing this to a boil. I'll put a lid on it, and I will, once I have put my lid partway on, after it has come to a full boil, I let it boil for about 5 minutes, and then I will drop the heat to just a gentle simmer, not a barely simmer, but a medium gentle simmer, which is about a 3 or 3.5 on my convection cooktop or on my convection other cooktop, my convection stovetop. So, and then I will check these every 15 minutes or so, and I'll stir them. I'll assess if they need to be covered with a little more water. You do want to make sure you have enough, because the beans won't cook all the way through if they can't absorb enough liquid. So just to keep your beans covered a little bit in water through the process. And when that happens, I'll come back and we'll talk more about what happened in the meantime and what they look like and how we'll use these beans. So I'll catch you in just a little bit. Well, we're back, and the cowboy beans are finished. They cooked about 2 hours and 20 minutes, and they are beautiful and so aromatic. They smell delicious. So to catch you up, I left you by bringing the beans to a boil. They boiled for about 5 minutes. I reduced the heat to a medium low, where they simmered for that 2 hours and 20 minutes. Over the course of that time, I added another 3 cups of water. So we started with our can of beer and 1 cup of water as our liquid, and they kept absorbing more and more liquid. And now we've got a beautiful sauce that is rich looking and really rich and beautiful smelling. You can see that. And we'll give it a taste. Oh, I also added about 2/3 of the way through, I added about a teaspoon of salt. You don't want to salt your beans too soon, or that'll prevent them from cooking thoroughly. It'll toughen the skin. So you want to wait until they're about 2/3 of the way or so tender before you add the salt. But you do want to add that before they're finished cooking, so they have a chance to absorb a little bit of salt to make them really palatable. So let's have a taste. They're very hot. Oh, I should also tell you one other tip to let you know that the beans are ready is when you take a spoonful of them out of the pot and set them on a dish and just gently blow on them, you'll see the skins begin to sort of peel away. It's very subtle, but that's a sign that the beans are cooked through as well. So, okay, let's taste. Delicious. So the garlic, you'll remember we started with a lot of garlic, about 10 cloves. This long, slow cooking has melted the garlic into the sauce and taken away any fire. So it's just very sweet almost. And all of the bacon and the onion, all are coming through. The jalapeno doesn't make it very hot, just a really subtle kind of herbaceous spiciness, and so delicious. So I hope that you'll give cooking beans from scratch a try. Maybe you'll try this cowboy bean. It'd be a fun thing to have for campouts or just summertime fun. So thank you for joining me. More recipes are available at 101milekitchen.com.